All right, welcome to the Golf Podcast Live. I'm your host, Raphael Calamat, alongside Michael Bleakley, who's always in Vancouver. He's not at ECS. Mike is not feeling too well, so he's at home. I'm at home as well this week. I'm not at Mindshare Workspace Studios, but we've got a really special guest today and a very, very interesting topic. His name is Jeff Bullock. He's in Colorado. He's with the Universal Golf Ranking System, TUGR. I find it really, really interesting. Got a lot of questions for you, Jeff.
Welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, welcome, Jeff. Yeah, it's a hot topic and very relevant right now with the state of golf. So I look forward to unpacking this with you today.
Perfect. Yeah, excited to be on. Thanks for having us.
Tell us, how did you get involved with golf? You know, we have a lot of different listeners and audiences on audio and video. Tell us how you got involved with golf in general and what took you to this point.
Yeah, so I mean, golf's just sort of been a family affair, to be honest. My dad's played most of his life and got me started early. I say I don't ever remember a time not playing golf. And I've got 3 brothers, brother-in-law, sister, and we're the, I guess, quintessential golfing family, and played at sort of all different levels, and just at this point, have a day job and enjoy getting out.
Yeah. What kind of handicap are you holding down these days?
These days, I'm probably around a 4 or 5. So if I can get out there and break 80, it's a good day.
Yeah, good. Yeah, we're similar cap, so we'll have to get a game in sometime.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, let's jump right into this. I love the fact that you guys say you're the world's most accurate, understandable, all-inclusive, and unbiased golf rankings. That's very cool. I like the way you guys worded that. A lot of people have a problem with the OWGR. The live players are not included. And then you have the senior players as well. Both on the Legends Tour and the Champions Tour not included. There's some independent rankings that I've seen over the years, but I don't really know how those work for the Champions players. Tell us about the TUGR, how it's composed, and who do you guys have in there right now?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thanks. So the Universal Golf Rankings, TUGR, we call it TUGR for short, but really, it was born out of sort of the environment that we're seeing in golf, where there are live players that are excluded, there are Champions Tours players who are excluded, and we feel like the OWGR is not an accurate representation of the actual rankings in the golf world. So it was just sort of born out of what's going on in the golf world, and kind of digging into the methodology. It is a performance-based system, and what do I mean by that? Most other ranking system, which is OWGR and the new Sports Illustrated ranking system that came out, which is really just a copy paste of OWGR. Those are points-based systems where they kind of have a black box formula. They don't exactly tell you how they do things, but they sort of tell you how they do things. And then they allocate points based on your finish in a tournament. And what we've found is that they allocate points on an exponential curve. So you get a ton of points if you finish first, second, or third, and then it kind of evens out as you go down in the places. But what that gets is it actually does not put a premium on consistency. You can get individuals who have 1 or 2 good weeks a year and then actually really don't play great at all, and they could be ranked really high because of the way the points are distributed. But then what we also found is that there are kind of embedded biases in the different ranking systems that really kind of punish different tours and different players on kind of how they finish. And so, at a high level, we sought out to do something different. We didn't want to create a points-based system. We wanted to do a performance-based system. So at a high level, we map the head-to-head matchups of every player against every other player in the golf kind of world, golf universe. So think of it like a matrix of every player on one axis, every player on the next axis, and you just match up every head-to-head matchup that they play to get a relative performance against each other. And then we can create a ranking system. And the best way to describe that is sort of like a satellite approach, right? you need maybe 4 or 5 satellites to pinpoint exactly where you are on Earth if you have a GPS. Well, we've got hundreds of satellites through hundreds of head-to-head matchups that are pinpointing exactly how players kind of perform relative to each other, and then we stack rank them that way.
It's how did you go about creating a database and integrating cloud computing to run this matrix like that you know, was that yourself, or are you a data geek and a computer engineer on the side, or like tell us a little bit about the tech, you know, behind the system?
Correct. Yeah, not me. So one of my brothers is the, I guess you could say, the data geek, as you put it.
Yeah.
But he runs optimizations, is what we call it, for his day job. And so we just took the cloud computing optimization framework, which is a really high level of coding. I mean, generally it's a PhD level, if not more, of how you go about doing it. And we just started creating the database, you know, based on player performance. And the easiest way to describe it is, you know, Mike, if you and I play against each other on a regular basis and you beat me by 2 shots every time we play, but then if Raphael and I play against each other and I beat him by 3 shots every time we play, well, we know that, roughly speaking, you're probably 5 shots better than Raphael because we've got a common connection. And now think about mapping hundreds of common connections that way. And that's how we kind of came up with it. So luckily, one of our team members has a deep background in the cloud computing optimization, so we're able to do it.
Yeah, very cool.
That's great. Well, Jeff, look, the OWGR is an older system. They're always trying to revamp it. I don't think there's a perfect way to be able to get a point system in place. The tennis has struggled with this for many years and has come up with a pretty decent system. However, you know, there are governing bodies in play here. We're talking about the RNA, the USGA, the family of PGA tours who are, you know, really have their finger on the pulse. Have you approached these different organizations, and where are you along the road of where you guys want to be with this?
We've not formally approached any of these organizations. We would love to. We'd love to throw our hat in the ring. I mean, my understanding is with the OWGR revamp from last August and then the ensuing backlash from not just the public, but the players themselves, right? I mean, it was Rom who called it laughable, and both Scotty and TUGR said that it's completely flawed. You know, I'd be surprised if there wasn't a revamp going on behind the scenes, and we'd love to, you know, throw our hat in the ring and, you know, let them know what we've come up with and how it can help them.
You have any strategy in terms of reaching out to any of the leagues or organizations going forward?
You know, without getting into too many details, we've actually had people reach out to us, you know, in various organizations. So we've had some conversations, some real interesting conversations already. But at this point, we're still looking to, you know, I guess get in the inner circle, you could say.
No, definitely, because like I said before we went on, it's like you've simplified this and handicapped, you know, all the top players. So from someone who doesn't know a lot about the ranking system, you can easily identify who's you know, who's the best in this order. And right now you have John Rahm, Rory, and Scotty Scheffler 1, 2, and 3, and I think that's really accurate based on what we're seeing on the PGA Tour right now. Yeah, I mean, it looks like you're onto something. We know the world golf ranking needs a little bit of a renovation, so to speak. So yeah, we need to help you get some publicity and get this system in the right ears.
Yeah, so what you see with our system is, and I think with any ranking system, as long as you have a decent formula, you're going to pinpoint the top 10 or 20 golfers in the world who should be in the top 20. Where we see our system really deviates from OWGR and other systems is that 100 to 300 or 100 to 400 ranked player, kind of the journeyman who's, you know, scratching out a living. There's a ton of players who I like to call it that they're in OWGR purgatory, right? They play really well. They play good enough to be in the top 200 of the rankings, but they can never get out of the purgatory. Where in our system, when it's just purely performance-based relative to their peers, You know,
Mhm.
we might have someone who's ranked 30th or 40th who's 110th, you know, in OWGR, because their performance actually merits a better ranking than the points that are allocated based on an exponential curve. And that's where I think we really make a splash, is showing the true rankings of, you know, the 50 through 500 players.
That's incredible. You know, if you're just joining us, we're talking about Jeff Bullock from Colorado. He's with the Universal Golf Ranking System, TUGR. And we're talking about how all these players would fit kind of into this ranking system, that being Champions Tour players, regular tour players, possibly amateurs. That's a good question. Tell us, where can we get the information? Where do we find your socials or your website? And tell us who's actually in these rankings. For those who haven't heard about this, they're going to go take a look at it and see that there's a mix of different players in there in different categories.
Yep. So you can find us at TUGR.org. That's TUGR.org. And we're on Instagram and Twitter, and our handles are at TUGR Golf, TUGR Golf. And we try to post regularly updates. But yeah, those who are included in the database, that's a great question. So right now we are hosting, I believe, the top kind of 7 or 8 tours. We want to keep adding more tours as we can, but PGA Tour players, DP Tour players, Japanese, Asian, Champions Tour, Challenge Tour, Korn Ferry Tour. And the reason why it works is because what you need is, you know, we get crossover between all of these tours, right? There's LIV, and LIV is in there as well, sorry. So, you know, LIV Tour players play against PGA Tour players in majors, and they, up until recently, and maybe, you know, we'll know in the future, they played on DP World Tour events. And so, you know, between DP events, PGA Tour events, majors, LIV Tour events, and Korn Ferry Tour events, you've probably got kind of the 5 biggest tours where, when we map it, you've got tons of crossover of players playing against each other. And so when you think about that satellite analogy, we've got tons of satellites that are pinpointed in every single player on a relative basis. And so what I'd say is, when you go to TUGR.org, the output is understandable. The output is just a relative strokes per round to the best player in the world. So everyone's just benchmarked off the best player in the world. And so you can look at it, and right now we've got John Rahm's the best player in the world, and Rory is a quarter shot per round worse than John every time they play against each other. Or in other words, 1 shot per tournament, right? So like, okay, yeah, they're basically neck and neck. But, you know, we look at, I think one thing I want to point out, you brought up Champions Tours players. I mean, we've seen Jerry Kelly make the cut at the Players Championship. You know, Stricker and Zach Johnson played last week. They didn't make the cut, but they only missed it by a shot or 2 in the team event. And I think
Ernie Els at the Heritage.
Ernie Els at the Heritage. I mean, Padraig Harrington's playing all over the world and making cuts and finishing top 10. And so we know that there are Champions Tour players who should be top 200, top 300, maybe top 100 players in the world, but they're not allowed to participate in the quote unquote OWGR system. And so they're included because they can be included. Like, we have data that shows how well they perform against, you know, the young bucks of the world, and they're still playing well. And so that's what I think makes it really interesting is, you know, you look at an Ernie Els or a Padraig that might be 200th or 300th in the world. Well, would I take them over, you know, somebody else on any given week? Of course I would. But OWGR might have them as 2000th in the world, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it works. I mean, you've got Steve Stricker holding down 94th place in the world, which is amazing for someone of his age and playing on the Champions Tour. Could you just imagine if that allowed him into certain events? Like this could really change. It could change a lot of entrances into tournaments. So yeah, I think it's really interesting. And you have Stephen Alker down here. Where did he go? Was he
163?
Yeah, right. And the first time I looked, I think he slipped lately, hasn't he? If you were to,
he has. So let me I'll just back up, and then I want to talk about Stricker. But so we really have 1 input and 2 assumptions, and that's what I think the simplicity and understandability comes into it. The one input is just head-to-head scores against each other. And then we have to make two assumptions. How far back do we look? And then the minimum number of rounds to be included in the ranking system.
Okay.
So I think we use 20 rounds as a minimum number of rounds to be in the system. And then we look back 12 months on a rolling 12-month basis. And there's a lot of debate. Do you do 18 months, 24 months? We felt like 12 months was the right place to be. OWGR does 24 months, but they de-weight. They de-weight it along the way. So it's really only a 59-week look back. But nonetheless, with Stricker, I mean, Stricker, when he won in Hawaii a month or two ago, that was his 12th Champions Tour win in 48 tries. So, I mean, he's winning a quarter of the time he steps out there, he wins. I mean, he was clearly the best player on the Champions Tour when he decides to play. And that can translate against other players. Yeah.
Well, definitely. You put Stricker up against any PGA Tour player, and there's a good chance he could win on one round, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that's the nature of our sport. But no, that's a great way. Now, I'm curious about how this could be applied against betting. Have you thought about that, or any gaming outfits that might be interested in using your system to capping players?
So this topic comes up a lot. We did not make this with the intent of going down the gaming route. That kind of wasn't our priority. The reality is there is a predictive nature to our to rankings. If you have accurate rankings, there's a predictive nature to it. But we're not really interested in going down that route. We have other avenues that we're pursuing right now that are the non-gaming route.
Okay.
Yeah, that brings me to my next question. You know, is this a fun project? I would think there is some monetizing to be had, and I guess betting might be the biggest and quickest way to do it. But certainly there are different avenues. You know, long are the days gone when all our rankings were based on how much you made. Right? It was very simple back then, but it was a pretty good system that was in place. Now with everybody making such different amounts, being the Champions Tour all the way to the Live Tour, we're talking about millions of dollars difference. So that wouldn't do very much. The OWGR has something called the current ranking system. Then they have different statistics on there, strokes gains and ratings, as well as their federation rating. Are there different stats or different types of information we could get from the site?
Yeah, so if you go to the site, whether it's on your phone or on the actual site, click into any player you want. So pick a player you want, click into it, and we've got a lot of great generated stats. The one I think that's the most interesting is what I call the scatter plot. And that is just simply how they perform against every other player. And that's essentially how they get their ranking. So it's almost the proof statement of why they are ranked where they are, because it's how they perform against every other player on a relative basis. But we've got about 8 or 9 different boxes that show interesting stats, whether it's scoring average or strokes relative to the best player in the world that you can check out.
That's neat. I might use it for betting. I might just, this might be a good avenue because I've been losing pretty big time. I think I owe Mike a few dollars since I went out to Vancouver and played with him as well. Yeah, so Mike, do you have any other questions? I've got one more big one, and that's because we always do our, final questions with funny and embarrassing golf stories. Might not have to do with rankings. I want you to think about this.
Think about that.
When I say funny or embarrassing, think of a golf outing. Doesn't have to be with a notable person, but if something funny happened, let us know. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of interesting information. So for one, I recommend everyone to go to TUGR.org and dive into this. And I think golf, we're all used to betting and playing for a little bit of cash or picking our players, but I just see a lot of good information in at our fingertips for choosing our next pool. We have the PGA coming up, so there's a lot of great information. But Yeah, good work here, Jeff. No, I think
Yeah, Mike, you and I are always looking for new places where we could get information, going to Data Golf or OWGR or
yeah,
watching different podcasts, getting information, whether it's
following Lou
Sirius FM or the
Stagner.
PGA. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, have you, Jeff, have you actually approached any of these statisticians out there, like the Lou Stagners and of all that, to get any feedback from them?
We've had some conversations with some individuals. I think, I'll say that much. We've had some interesting conversations with people who've been involved with kind of some of the systems that are out there, and have gotten really good feedback. And again, it's what should I say? We're trying to break into an area that people don't want broken into, if I say it that way, right? And so there's very much a circle and a moat that has been built around the current system, and we're trying to disrupt it. And we think we're disrupting it in a more accurate way that could go in lots of different directions. And so we're kind of swimming upstream against that, while at the same time there's a great following of people who know that the current system isn't working. So we've got the tailwinds of that, and we've got kind of maybe pushback of the current system.
Yeah, you've got a moat guarded with the gators and pythons, for indeed, right? Because it's a very cliquey organization, to the OWGR, and so yeah, you are traveling uphill, but doesn't mean this couldn't grab legs. And what do you know about the bias that's applied to the OWGR? Have you been able to uncover any details on how that works?
Yeah, so what's interesting, that the OWGR in most systems, what they're plagued by is we've called it internally the chicken and the egg dilemma. And that is that they're trying, and it usually revolves around strength of field, right? So everyone has to figure out, how do I rank a field? Because you should get more quote unquote points or more credit, I'm going to say, for a harder strength of field than a lower one. So to get a strength of field, they have to figure out who the best players in the world are playing that week. The problem is that's the output that they're trying to come to, right? Yeah. So you've got this circular reference where they've got to figure out who the best players are in the world to figure out who the best players are in the world are. And so every system does it differently, but they figure out, in theory, what's an inferior way to rate a field to create a calculation to go into a points-based system. And so there's just these, it's not necessarily, it is biases that are embedded, but it's also the fact that you just lose accuracy at every step along the way, that you are redoing a formula or re-assuming something else. There's assumption after assumption after assumption. And really it's the tours, it's the Japanese tour, the Asian tour, the other tours are, live, who they don't even rank, who are biased against because of how they do all of these inputs, right?
Yeah.
That's really interesting, Jeff. I like the word that you use, disruption, because that's a fairly new term in golf. There's so much disruption going on, but with disruption comes change, and things get sped up. Progress and evolution in this game has changed considerably over the last 6 to 12 months. It's unbelievable how things have changed and how things are moving quickly, not only with the way the game is played and how it's viewed, but with the technology that's used and the feedback that we get as an audience with all the media. So let's get back to our funny question. I don't know if you thought of something. Did you ever have a very funny or embarrassing moment at a golf course, or anybody notable?
Yeah, so I'll tell this story, and my dad will laugh because it's 20 years ago, but we still quote it today. Is when I was in high school and I thought I was a pretty great golfer and I thought I was hitting the ball long. There was one hole when my dad and I were playing, and he outdrove me by, 20 or 30 yards. And I was just flabbergasted. I couldn't figure it out. And I made the comment to him. I said, well, you must have hit a sprinkler head, right? And still to this day, he will not, not he, but it's a joke still to this day that we talk about that is, me as this 18-year-old who thought he was on top of the world couldn't fathom the fact that my my dad could outdrive me at that stage. And I made a dumb, funny comment, and, family inside joke, but, you must have
Yeah.
it comes up at least once a year.
Yeah.
Oh, I hear you. We're always chasing distance, and now they might be regulating the golf ball for the highest echelon of golfers and on the elite level, maybe
Yep.
starting with the PGA majors. Obviously, the USGA is making some steps in that direction. Probably by 2025, we'll see our first US Open with a regulated golf ball. But here we go. Mike, I'm really excited that we got Jeff on. For those of you who don't know about TUGR, go check them out, tugr.org. Check out their social media links. Make sure you click on them, follow what they're doing, because it's really interesting and it's new. And Mike, you want to add anything?
Yeah, and don't forget to smash subscribe on our YouTube channel and follow us for golf information and info on our upcoming guests. As of tomorrow, this will be out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and 14 others. So yeah, you can find us there, and we'll also include Jeff's links in our description, so you can find the TUGR content. And Jeff, thank you. You're doing a great job on social media, by the way, posting little bits of data and showing your system versus the other system. And yeah, keep up the great work. And if you're ever up in Vancouver or Toronto, would love to host you for a game.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, good luck with everything you're doing.
Excellent. No, thank you very much. So no, that's great. Thank you everyone for watching and listening. I'm going to cut the